So welcome everyone. If you're joining myself and Cami live, then welcome to our evening. If you are watching this as a pre-recorded session, then welcome later on whenever you are watching us. Tonight we are going to be talking about portfolios, so how to really build portfolios using Microsoft's OneNote and specifically in this session, Class Notebook, simply because we really believe that Class Notebook brings the best portfolio experience to the Microsoft OneNote environment. The link that you see across the bottom of the page at the moment is the link to this particular slide deck. So if you'd like to have this slide deck on hand to follow along with, sure, but more importantly afterwards for resources, then it might be a good idea to just take note. I'm sure that Cami's also going to send that in the chat to the meetings that you will have it. It's just going to be the cc.page/OneNote portfolio. I see Cami dropped it in the chat, so you already have that. As I say, you might not need to follow along with me because I have the slide deck in front of me, but it is going to be an important or a potentially useful reference material for the session. You will also note that we are actually going to record the session. So if for whatever reason there isn't something that we fully cover, or you just want to go back and see a specific piece again, you will have access to the workshop recording. We will send that out to you in a link sometime later on this week or next week, where you'll get the link to that recording if you would like to watch it back. So my name is Alexandra Lamarca. I am actually located in Montreal, Quebec, which is unceded territory, and I currently do not work in the education sector. I am working in a corporate environment doing tech training for employees, but I do come from an educational background. I worked for Microsoft for about 5 years, and I've had the pleasure of working with the Cobblestone Collective for almost, I'm going to say 3 years now. I think I've been with the team. So it's a wonderful place, and I hope that you're going to learn a lot. And I'll give Cami the chance as well to introduce herself.
Well, thank you. I've been with Cobblestone Collective for for about 2 years now too. I'm coming from Alberta. I'm from Medicine Hat. It's in the bottom southeast corner. And I am an instructional coach in my district. And so I do lots with teachers and technology and students and all sorts of things like that. And my area is right on the border between Treaty 4 and Treaty 7.
There we go. So I'm just going to take a couple of seconds to do a quick land acknowledgement. If you don't know what land it is that you're learning from, this is a great website. It's native-land.ca. You can check out where it is that you are currently teaching from or maybe living on, as it's very likely that you're participating and learning from or near the traditional territorial lands of one of the many Indigenous groups that we have across Canada. I noticed that I am currently on the traditional territory of the Mohawk and Haudenosaunee people, whose beautiful land I'm able to teach, learn, explore, and share my passion of technology with you from. So that is, if you don't know, that's a great website to check out. Lots of really cool information on there. So before we get started, a massive thank you to Cobblestone Collective, the wonderful organization who we are working with tonight to bring this session to you, as well as a massive thank you to Microsoft for making this session free for educators, both in person and as a recorded session if you would like to watch it later on. Thank you to both of our partners. We're really excited to be with you tonight. We are going to be covering quite a few things tonight. I've got about 6 or 7 things. I've added a few extras in there as well. But we're going to start off by really explaining why portfolios. What are we getting out of portfolios? Why do we think it's a great way to present content, to present information, to highlight student success? What really is a portfolio? Why is that a great tool that we can be using? Then we're going to go through how to actually create a OneNote. I'll have you do that along with me, along at your own pace. I'll give you time to work. We're going to talk about how to add content to OneNote, both through the application as well as through a potential third-party app, which is called Office Lens, which for the K-2 space is going to be very relevant because you can just simply take a picture of the work and then have students comment, write, draw over the top. We're going to finish off by talking about how to share and manage the notebook. What I love about the Class Notebook feature is that you actually get a parent link. So if you wanted to show parents exactly what their learner had been discovering over the year, you could absolutely do that. And last but not least, we're going to leave you with some great resources on the MEC, which is the Microsoft Educator community. And you can just check that out and see what other courses maybe you'd like to follow on there as well. So a quick sneak peek, we'll cover this again at the end, but the Microsoft Educator Center is really a great place for educators to get more content. If you hang around to the end, you'll get a sneaky little professional development code that you can claim for 1 hour's worth of professional development with Microsoft. So I'll walk you through how to claim that at the end. But if this kind of whets your appetite and gets you excited about OneNote, you'll find out that there's actually a lot more training available to you on this wonderful Microsoft Educator Center. So we're going to jump right in with talking about why portfolios. Maybe you can let us know in the chat space if you're already using portfolios, and if so, maybe what grade it is that you teach, just to make sure that you are in that session that's mostly catered towards K-2, but let us know in the chat space, are you a portfolio user and what grades are you working with? But these are just some of the kind of ideas that we came up with when we were brainstorming around why do we really think that portfolios are such a great tool to have in the learning environment. So one of the first ones that we talked about was really that parent portal into learning. So much that happens in the classroom, we can't actually see as a parent. We don't see the way that our child or our learner is interacting. We maybe don't get to capture all of the learning process. So this portfolio is a great way to show off to parents kind of what we're doing in the classroom as the year goes on. You have that second piece there, which is that longitudinal view of student development. So not only throughout the year, but really year over year. You could look back on your class notebook and really see, okay, where was that student when they came into kindergarten, and where are they after they're ending off the year? And then where were they at the beginning of grade 1, and where are they at the end of grade 2? You really get that long-term, really interesting layout. You can be able to see everything that a student has potentially done. It makes thinking visible. I love when students have their process written down somewhere so we can see how they're thinking. Portfolios are a great way to document their thinking and really be able to see, as we said, putting the spotlight on the process rather than the product in and of itself.
I think that's one of the hugest ones, Alex, is that, it's not just the things that you send home at the end, but it really gives us a look into the process and the thinking, and sometimes that's where the real value is. And so portfolios aren't just like the pretty thing at the end that's all tied up with the bow, but how did we get there? So that's what I love.
I totally agree with you on that one. It's really great to see the evolution, not even of the student, but just even the evolution of the project or the idea or the work that they're doing. It's great to see that. It showcases aspects of learning that are not easy to send home. So it can show, for example, collaboration. With OneNote and that class notebook, you're going to see that there's actually a collaboration space. You could really highlight, this is how your learner is really working with other learners to produce some kind of content or work. So that's a really great aspect. It emphasizes aspects of student learning that's not captured in a mark, which is that process, right? We get to see how that evolution has happened. It can help them develop digital design and presentation skills. I know that as a student, my worst nightmare was doing portfolios because I'm probably the least artistic person that you will ever come across. So the idea of putting together something that looked nice was just not for me. But OneNote makes it really easy. There's like images, there's symbols, there's stickers, all of that like prettiness and that nice layout. I'm glad that there's a tool that could help me with that. So in your opinion, what else? Is there anything else, Cami, that might be on your list, or anybody that feels like sharing? Is there anything else that we have on this list that maybe we missed, and anything else that you might want to think about when it comes to portfolios?
One thing that comes to my mind is, OneNote being a digital platform, is that how easy it is to get the digital portfolio piece home. So when my kids were little, I still have these binders with all it's like paper, right? But
yes.
Now with these digital portfolios, we can hear them read. Here's them reading at the beginning of grade 1, in the middle of grade 1, and the end of grade 1. Videos, whether it's the class song or a little snippet of the Valentine's party. We can send home videos. We can send home audio, and even actually one of the things that I love as a teacher is I can save time. I don't have to type everything out. I can actually leave audio comments for the parent and the child as well. And so that really speeds things up for me.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. I think about those early learners. They can't read a paragraph of feedback, but they can definitely listen to it. So that in and of itself is a great piece of this digital portfolio idea. So those are some of the ideas that we had. If you have any more, feel free to share them in the chat or later on. But what we're going to talk about now is really what is OneNote. So maybe in that chat space, or if you feel like unmuting yourself, more than welcome to. Do you already use OneNote? And if you use it, what do you use it for? I know that when I first learned about this digital binder software, I had no idea how I was going to use it. When I started working at Microsoft, I'd literally never heard of OneNote before. I had no idea how I was going to use it. And it has become the tool that I find I use the most in the Microsoft 365 suite. I do my weekly meal planning in there. I have a virtual recipe binder that I keep all of my recipes in because I find it so easy to organize them. I have like any of my receipts that I have for travel for work. I just simply take a picture and keep all the digital copies of my receipts. I can think of a million different ways to use OneNote, but in this particular case, for portfolios, the fact that it's going to be divided up into sections and then pages is really going to be something that helps us organize the portfolios in whatever way makes sense for you as the educator. But you'll always have that structure of a OneNote binder. Inside the binder, there'll be sections, and then inside those sections, there will be pages. That's really that like kind of 3-step hierarchy of organization in the digital binder. Now, I point out just for a second because I think that it's important. There are actually 3 different versions of OneNote, but 2 that are really important. One being the version for OneNote Windows 10 Mac web, because the web is the same. It has the same layout where you'll find that you've got the notebooks, then the sections, then the pages all in the left-hand margin. But the OneNote 2016 will have your sections across the top and then your pages along the right. Now, there's not a big difference as far as functionality. The only big thing here is that OneNote 2016 has its own syncing client, so its own syncing software behind, which means that it doesn't actually sync across all of your devices very quickly. So if you're an educator that's working sometimes on one computer and then you work on a different computer at home, and then sometimes you've got a class iPad, for example, that you're using for literacy stations, you won't necessarily see everything appearing across all of the devices if you're working in OneNote 2016. If you're using an iPad, if you're using a mobile device, or if you're using a Windows or a Mac, you can actually go with that regular OneNote app, and that way you make sure that you see the same thing across everywhere. If you don't have that already, or you're thinking, oh my goodness, I'm still working in the 2016, don't worry, I included in the slide deck a link to download that newer version. That way you just make sure that everything looks the same everywhere and helps you stay really organized when it comes to building those portfolios. So those are the 2 versions. I suggest that you use the one that's for Windows 10 Mac web. So now we know kind of what a OneNote binder is. It's that digital binder tool that we're specifically going to use for portfolios that's organized into sections and subsections and pages. But what we're really going to spend most of our time today looking at is this thing called Class Notebook, which is kind of the same layout, but specifically made for the classroom environment. So you can think of OneNote as kind of that personal digital binder. You build it, it's not shared with anyone unless you actually go out and share it with people. The student digital binder, which is this class notebook, has the teacher's binder plus an individual binder for every student, plus a space to collaborate. So when you think about that kind of portfolio setup, you as the educator can see into every single student section, but the student can only see themselves and a space that's common. So when you think about building portfolios, a class notebook is a great way to go because it allows you to create, for example, a piece of work that you would like to show, send that to every single student, and then have the student respond, which I'm going to show you in a second using, for example, the audio recording feature. So a class notebook is really that space that brings the whole class together under one binder, where you're kind of the portfolio manager. You're the person that's in charge of all of the content, and the students only see their own spaces. So in a regular OneNote binder, we have no sections, we have no pages, nothing. It comes completely empty. But in a class notebook, we actually get 4 different spaces. So we get a collaboration space where students and teachers can work together. So as Cami and I mentioned, you sometimes want to highlight that in-class work, how the students were working together. The collaboration space would be a great place to put that work because everybody could see it and everybody could work together on it. Then you've got the content library, and the content library is a place where you as the educator can publish course material. The students could go and look at it, but they can't make any changes. So for example, you're giving them an example of what you want one of their portfolio pages to look like. You could build that example in the content library because you know that no student could go in and change it, but they could work on it, or you could then open their section and assist them in replicating that content library. Then you get a teacher only section. This is a space just for you as educators to kind of take your own notes, keep your own observations. It's great because you could then add those into the portfolio if you wanted to as the portfolio gets built out. And then last but not least, you have that student notebook where it's just a private space for each student. So if you are in the early grades, maybe you'll actually be opening up that section for the student and then getting them to do the work there with you or helping them bring the work in. In the older grades, it can kind of be a bit more self-managed space, but in these early grades, you will get a section for every student that you know is private just to that student, and I'll show you how to share it with just that parent. So I'm going to show you 2 different examples of how you could use a portfolio. So I've actually built 2 already. I've got one which is a portfolio by subject, and then I've got one which is a portfolio by competency. Just depending on what grade it is that you teach, what kind of portfolio you're looking to build, this can be very useful. So I'm going to start with the portfolio by subject. So as you can see, you get that collaboration space where all my students could work together. You get that content library where you as the educator could publish content. So in the early grades, like you are teaching K1, 2, you might have like English language arts, math. In the French example, you might have French immersion, so you'd have the French section. You might have social sciences. You could organize all of your portfolio content by the different subject. Then you'll see I actually have 3 students. So I have Grady, Henry, and Marcia as examples. And if I go into Grady's section of his portfolio and I open English language arts, you can see here that I actually have 3 competencies. So competency 1 uses language to talk and communicate, reads and listens written, spoken, and media text, and number 3, which is produces text. So competency 1, for example, inside Grady's portfolio in his English language arts section, I could put a ton of different examples of competency 1 on this same page. So I could have, for example, a video of Brady reading or talking to me to show that he knows how to use language to talk and communicate. On this example 2, where it shows me that Grady reads and listens to written and spoken media. Well, again, I could have a video of him reading and then have, for example, an audio recording where he has to write what I'm saying. And all of these examples could go on one page for the English language arts in the competency 2. The same thing for science. So science competency 1, to propose an explanation. So I could take a picture, for example, of a water experiment that we did in kindergarten when we were pouring water between 2 different vessels and comparing the different sizes and how we could explain that. So that would be a great way, is really just by organizing by subject. So every single subject would have its own competencies, and then on one page, you'd put multiple examples for each competency. So that's one way you could organize it, which might make sense if you're working in that lower grade, because then you can have each subject kind of split up. If you're working competency based, then what you might end up having is competency 1, which in this case is our cross-curricular competencies. So competency 1 in this case is, if I'm not mistaken, to use information. So if that's the cross-curricular that you're focusing on, I could go to, for example, English language arts and say, okay, how is Grady demonstrating that in English he's using information? How for competency 2 to solve problems is Grady demonstrating that in arts, he's doing some problem solving. Maybe that's a puzzle piece that they're building together. That's art, that's cross-curricular. He's solving that using some puzzles. So you could organize by competency, as I said. These might work better for cross-curricular competencies, or you can organize by subject, completely depending on what you may need. It's completely up to you. Cami, how do you organize your portfolios, or neither of these ways?
Well, it depends, but what I do find is that, especially with the little ones, as they're getting started, or if you're using them with the students for the first time, it's important to give them the structure or the skeleton. Otherwise, it's too overwhelming. It's kind of like, we tell them where to put the duotangs and all that, just like in your classroom, everything has a space. Well, same thing in the portfolio. So while we could let them put things where they want, part of the process is giving them that scaffold or that structure. And maybe even, if you're getting started now, Alex's here has, several layers upon layers. Maybe you start with 2 sections and a page or 2 in each. So even starting simply is absolutely a great way to go about it.
Absolutely. And the great thing about the class notebook is that, like, all of these subsections for every student, I don't have to build them all. I build it once and the class notebook duplicates it for every student, which is nice. I do, however, have to go into the competencies. But let's say I'm in for Grady, this is in his science section. Let's say, okay, I didn't have time to put it in Henry's science section. I can see that when I click on his, it's empty. What I can actually do is come to the science page and just say, I want to copy that over and move it into another person's section. So it is pretty easy to set up, but as we said, you can really tailor it to your needs. So that is how you can actually lay out the competencies. So I'm really going to walk you through now how to set up a class notebook, and then I'm going to give you time to do it yourself. So you can do it through Class Notebook, the actual tool. I see that Cami has very kindly popped into the chat the link that will take you directly to the Class Notebook setup. I'm going to suggest that you do it through there just for today. But if you are a district that uses Teams, which Teams honestly doesn't work really well with the smaller grades, but if you do use Teams, you can do it through there as well. But in either case, it will take you through this kind of 6-step process where you're going to name your notebook, you're going to get an overview of what it looks like, you're going to add some teachers, you're going to add some students, you design each of those individual student spaces, and then you get a preview of what it looks like. So I'm actually going to do that with you now. I'm going to walk you through it, and then I'm going to give you time to try it yourself. But if you click on the link that Cami sent in the chat, it will actually bring you to this page where you can create a class notebook. So as I said, I'm going to walk through it, and then I'm going to get you to have a try. If I go into create a class notebook, you can see that my first task is to name it. So I'm going to call this grade 1 portfolio 2022. Oh, actually, I guess it was 2021/2022. So that's my portfolio name. Oh, and I'm not going to do a dash because I guess I can't. Maybe I can do one of those. There we go. There are those 4 sections that I talked about. The collaboration space where we can all work together, the content library where I can push information, the teacher only section where I can see that no one else can see, and then the student notebook where every individual student has a chance. Okay.
Sorry, I kind
Yes.
of missed that. So I've opened up the page of the link.
Yep.
Logged in
Yep.
with my work email, and now I see 4 big squares. Do I create a class notebook?
The very first one, create class notebook.
Okay.
And then it should ask you to put in your notebook name as the first step.
Name of my class. Okay.
Yep. Or whatever you want to call it, portfolio, if you want to call it whatever it may be. This can also just be a test one for you to kind of mess around and play in.
Okay.
And then you'll have the notebook overview. So then it gives you those kind of 4 sections that you don't have to do anything with. They're already going to be there. So you just go through the process, you just press next. And here it gives you the option to actually add another educator. So if you, let's say in grade 1, you share students, You do lots of cross-curricular. You work very often with the other grade 1 class. You might want to add another teacher so that you just get one portfolio for the same class, and then each teacher can contribute. You might be in a scenario where you don't ever collaborate with another teacher. So this section is not mandatory. You do not have to add another educator, but you can if you want to. For things like cross-curriculars, this is great because you end up just getting one portfolio. Students don't have to manage multiple.
That's really key, Alex, with portfolios is we don't want to have, to keep it as simple for the students and the parents, one place is best. So if there's a separate music teacher, you could add the music teacher and then she can have a page, or if you have education assistants in your class, yes. I love to have them be in charge sometimes of a station where maybe the kids do a recording of their reading. And so if your education assistant can log into the OneNote, then she or he can really help out with the process.
Exactly. And it's the important part there is we get one portfolio that everyone can work in, so we don't have a bunch of things in a bunch of places. So that's that option. Now you have your students' names. If you're working in the Microsoft 365 environment, you should just be able to search for your students and have them actually pop up. If not, you can enter their email addresses, but these should usually show up. So if I just start typing, I'm just going to hope that there are some students. I don't know all the students' names. Let's see if I can get a few of them. I just have to guess sometimes. I know, I think I had one called Brady at some point.
Isn't there a Ron?
Let's find out.
No.
I know that these three are at least them. So let's do Henry because I know those guys are in there. Henry, and then I've got Marsha. There we go. And I must have a Sarah because there's always a Sarah. There is not. Great. Okay, I'll go with those three. So I'm just picking those three students, and then I'm saying next. And then you'll see by default, it gives these 5 sections for students. But for my portfolios, this is totally not relevant for me. So I'm actually going to get rid of all of them by just simply clicking on the X to remove, and then I'm going to add my own. So in this case, let's say I'm working in a grade 1 class. I'm going to be doing English language arts. I'm going to be doing some science. I'm going to be doing some math. I'm going to be doing some art. And as Cami had mentioned before, I'm going to be doing some music. So I'm actually going to organize by subject.
And, you know, Alex, we could even have a social emotional category where we can, you know, keep notes on how they're doing with making friends and interacting with other students. So, you know, you can focus on anything that you want or anything that's important to your school or your school goals.
We might have French second language too. As we said, we had someone who's in French immersion classrooms. That might also be something that you would like to have. Again, you can also add sections at any point. You can delete sections afterwards if you add something that maybe you don't need. That happens sometimes. Maybe you think that you need a section and in the end you don't actually need it. So there are those spaces. So every single student is going to get one of these categories. And then it gives you a preview. So it says, if you're the teacher, then here's what you're going to see. You're going to see the collaboration space, the content library, the teacher only section, and then your 3 students. If you're from the student side of things, you're going to see the collaboration space, the content library, your name, and then all of the sections that the teacher has given you. So once you're okay, you're like, okay, that makes sense. I don't need to redesign anything. The layout looks fine for me. I'm going to hit create. And what this does is it actually sets up all of the permissions for you. So you get that collaboration space where everyone can see and learn and write and talk and whatever. You get the content library where you can do anything, but the students can only see. And then you get that individual section. And then you'll get this page saying, ta-da, your portfolio is ready. Here's how you can open it. So you could open it in OneNote, which will actually open it on the desktop application. So I have the application on my Mac and there's that program. Or I could choose to open it in OneNote online. I'm going to choose to open it in OneNote online today because it's the easiest way to get into it. But if you already have the app, you can do either way. I just suggest doing it in OneNote online for today. And then you will see that it opens up this space that we've seen. So you get like a little welcome message kind of explaining how the content library and everything is laid out. And then you get those 3 sections plus each individual student. And then in each student's section, you get those categories that you have set out for your students. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. Let's say I'm going to give you 3 or 4 minutes. If you haven't built your OneNote already, go for it. If you are following along already, then just hit that create button, choose to open it in OneNote Online, and just spend some time kind of exploring what those sections are and what you might potentially have in there. So I'm going to be quiet for a couple of minutes, and I'm just going to let you explore. If you have any questions, don't hesitate.
One of the great things is that, as you can see, all of those classes that Alex put in, it just auto-populates each student. So you don't have to go into each student and type everything over and over. You put the classes in once and it deals them out to all the students. So
that's a big advantage of the class notebook, is that what you do in one, when you're setting it up, gets done for all, which is very helpful, because I can't imagine adding all of those sections. If you have a class of 30 students, that would take forever. Okay, so I'm just going to hop back over to my PowerPoint for a second and just show you in there. There I was. Let's just go full screen again so we can see. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of the type of content, and I'm going to let you also play around with what you can put in your OneNote binder. So the collaboration space, this is where the teacher and the student can write. So for example, if you're working, let's say you're doing some literacy stations or some math stations, you as the educator can then go around, and on your device, you can actually take notes of what the student is doing or ask the student to actually contribute as well. And for this teacher, they actually just grouped something that each individual student contributed in a different color. So they know, okay, this is what Lisa contributed. This is what Jordan contributed. This is what Alex contributed. You'll have that different separation by color. So when you look back, you can say, you know, these students really worked well together. They built off of each other's ideas, but this is their own individual works. That collaboration space really is a space where everybody can kind of get in and start working together. In this example, this was a problem of the week, where every week the teacher would add that into the content library and then send that page to the student and have this as an example of their evolution of their problem of the week every week. So again, talking about that long-term growth, we can see really what were the kind of problems that we were doing at the beginning of the year, seeing how the students were responding, and then every single week being able to kind of track their evolutions. That was using the content library to send that out to students. I'm going to show you how you can do that. So depending on what you might need, you can always add sections or pages. So you could use the different section to get, maybe you need to add, for example, music, because you forgot music. You can simply do that by adding a section. And then for every different item that you want to add to the portfolio, we'll add a page. So I'm going to show you what that looks like now. So I'm in my class notebook. For example, under Kara, under social emotional learning, I'm going to create a page in her social emotional learning called collaboration, just to talk about how she's working with others. So in here under SEL, I literally just went to add page and I gave collaboration a page in the social emotional learning for Kara. Now you'll notice that for Henry, under his social emotional learning, there is no collaboration page. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Oh, actually there is. Great. It does it. That's awesome. It never used to do that. So now it works. Awesome. So now Henry has a collaboration page as well. If for whatever reason he did not have a collaboration page, what I could do is click and say, I want to copy that. And I can choose, okay, I want Marcia to have a collaboration page under her English language arts, for example. I can copy that page over so you can. Okay, so there you go. It tells you when that's been copied.
Alex,
So
Marin's
yes.
wondering about student names and if we could just use first names instead of first and last.
So it actually completely depends on how your district is set up. So for the most part, they will have first and last because the likelihood of having more than one Alexandra is quite high. You can change the name. So I could click on this section and right click it in the actual desktop app and rename it. The problem with that is that you might actually break the parent teacher link because then it won't know that Henry is actually Henry Marler. So it will completely depend on how your district is set up. For most of the time, you will have both first and last because that is how the student account has been created. But
So
if you didn't want the last name, I could literally just go like this and minimize it as much as possible. But most likely you'll be stuck with first and last. But don't forget that when you share it with parents, they only see their own child's name or their own learner's name. They won't see anybody else's names.
If you remember when Alex was creating or adding the students, she started to type and they populated. So that's that would be the same in your district. Your students are all in your database with their names and emails, the connection. So you're not actually creating the student, you're adding the student, and that's why they come with the names that your district has. So
exactly.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so we actually did that already. So now we're going to talk about what you can put on a OneNote page, and this is where it starts to get really interesting. So we can organize content by having checklists. So if you wanted to see how a student progressed through a specific task as part of that, capturing that learning as it's happening, you could build, for example, a nice checklist that you could go through. You can actually tag some content. So you could say, okay, this was a tag for like the student really excelled on this one specific thing. And then you could tag another activity as, maybe this was a struggle. And then you could search for the tasks where they really excelled and the tasks where maybe they struggled a bit more. And then you could say, okay, you know what, there's a pattern here. Maybe we need to help Noah work on his syllable parsing because we can really see that when we do syllable activities, it seems like that's where he's struggling. So you could really tag and help highlight and find some of the content. You can ink, meaning you can draw. So it's great if you have a tablet in your classroom or some kind of touchscreen device. Students can actually draw, or you could draw straight in. You can actually do lots of different types of mixed media. So audio notes, videos, files. It's so many different options on that OneNote page. We're really going to show you how to do a lot of the audio and image capturing because for the early learners, this is a really powerful tool. And then we can also show a couple of other things. So you have a bunch of different types of text, a bunch of different types of bulleting, some speech to text, which I'm going to show you in just a second, as well as inserting things like files and pictures. So I'm really going to go through this entire menu, but I do just want to point out that if at some reason something is grayed out and it seems like you cannot add, it's probably because your cursor is stuck in the title. So just make sure you click on the page. I'll show you what I mean. So if you're following along, you can open up your OneNote binder. Inside any of the student sections, you can click add a page or in the content library, totally up to you where you'd like to do this. I'm going to do this in the content library, and I'm going to add a page for social emotional learning. Actually, I'm going to do it in English language arts. I changed my mind, and I'm going to focus on oral comprehension. Okay, let's just do that. So on this content library, the students can see this, but they can't do anything with it yet. And I'm going to show you how we can actually put this into the individual student's portfolio afterwards. So what I can do is if I click on that page, I can just start typing. So I can say we are going to be doing a reading activity. I am going to be reading out loud, and I'm going to get students to respond with an audio recording. That's what I'm going to do for this particular portfolio piece. If I want to have, for example, a checklist that I would like students to work through, I can come to this wonderful little section. I'm on the Home tab. I'm going all the way to the right, and I'm going to the tags, and I'm going to say that this is a to-do. So the student needs to read out loud and respond with an audio recording. I would like them to say their name, and I would like them to respond to the question asked. So those are the steps. Now, the student doesn't need to know this. This is more so for me, but I just want to have that checklist to see what it is exactly that we were doing on this particular portfolio piece. Now, as Cami mentioned before, for our early learners, typing isn't exactly the easiest thing, but it doesn't mean that students don't have great ideas. So what I love about OneNote is that in that first menu, in that Home tab, all the way to the right-hand side, you actually have this dictate, which is speech to text. So I could choose to click on the dictate button and choose what language is it I'm gonna speak. So for me, it's English Canada. And all I need to do is press that little microphone, and it will start actually typing what I say. So as soon as I press that button, you will see that it starts to type my words onto the screen. So for a student, especially in the early grades, that is a learner, an early learner, it might be very difficult to get all of their ideas out on paper through typing. But if they can speak what they understand, then all we have to do as the educator is simply click that dictate button for them and go through and have their learning captured through this wonderful feature. There we go. So that is a simple way to dictate information into that OneNote binder. So again, you can do that by simply clicking on the Home tab and going to that little microphone. You can also dictate in multiple languages. So if I wanted to switch to French, for example, and I wanted to say, hello students, I can say, bonjour mes étudiants. And it will do the dictation in French as well on the same page. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I would like you to try and write something on your page, maybe do a tag or one of those checklists, and try out the dictation feature. And I'm really going to give you 2 minutes. Is it possible to cut and paste the dictation into a Word document? Absolutely, but you probably don't even have to do that. There is dictation in Word as well. So if you wanted to dictate straight into the Word document, you absolutely could. And if you wanted to copy and paste it, all you need to do is take your text, highlight it, Control-C or Command-C, copy, paste. So you could do it either way. Okay, so it's been our 2 minutes. I'm going to move on to the next feature because we have so many great things to look at today. I am going to go in and I'm actually going to delete both of those things because I don't necessarily need them in this example. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to insert. And insert is where you really get to see the power of OneNote. So if I'm looking here and I'm saying, okay, I would like the students to read out loud and respond with an audio recording, and I'm going to respond to the question I'm asking, I'm going to do a couple of things. So let's say we're doing a lesson, we're talking about bears for some reason. I'm actually going to go get a picture, and I'm going to go look at a picture from online because maybe I don't have a particular picture of a bear that I would like to show them. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to look up a bear. Anything that we see here is actually Creative Commons licensed, so you can use any of these images. I'm going to pick, for example, this bear eating a salmon because we were talking about habitats, for example, and I'm going to actually insert that directly onto the page. So I'm giving my students a hint that this reading comprehension, this oral comprehension is going to be about bears. So they get to see the picture of what it is that we're talking about. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go in under that same insert tab, and I am going to add in an audio recording. And I'm going to click audio, and it's actually going to record my voice talking. So I'm going to click that, and I'm going to say, in the picture on the page, you can see that there is a bear. I would like to know, what do you think the bear has in its mouth? And is it a young bear or is it an old bear? Let me know what you think. And I've actually just put that audio recording right onto the page. So my students have a little bit of a hint with the picture, and then they have that audio recording. But as you can see, I've built all of this in the content library. So my students can just see this, but I actually want them to respond. So what the power of OneNote, and I think this is so amazing with this class notebook, is that what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that page and I'm actually going to click on the class notebook option, and I'm going to distribute that to every single student so then I can meet with the student and have them do their response. So I'm going to say distribute the page, and I'm going to do the distribution. And the class notebook is so smart that it's going to say, okay, you've got all of these students, and each of these students has all of these sections. I'm going to put this in the English language arts section for every single student. So if I do distribute, what it does is kind of what I call a virtual photocopy. It takes this exact page and it sends it into the English language arts section for every single student in my grade 1 class. So I don't have to copy this page, send it to anyone. I can really just put it in each individual student's portfolio. I can now go and sit with Kara, open her English language arts section. There is her English language arts oral comprehension, and she can now go on to that audio recording, click on the audio recording, listen to what I say. In the picture on the page, you can see that there is a bear. I would like, so she can listen to it and she goes, okay, the teacher told me that I have to tell her if it's a young bear or an old bear and what's it eating. So that same student, again, if this is in kindergarten or grade 1, you might have to sit down with them, take them to this audio and hit record. Maybe when you're in grade 2 or 3, they'll know that by now if you're using portfolios, but then the student can actually go and record themselves and say, Miss Alex, I looked at the picture and I think that maybe the bear is holding a fish, and I think that it's an old bear. Fine. So I don't think that my grade 1 student would have been able to type that out very quickly, but they can certainly audio record. So now I can go in as the educator and I can say, you know what? They did read out loud. They responded to the question asked, but they did not say their name. So they forgot this part. So there we go. An example of what we can do with an audio recording. I could also do something completely different with an audio recording and do something like, I can say to students, spell out the word bear. The word is bear. I could send that to my students. They could listen to it, and then they have a choice. If they wanted to, they can literally just type the word bear. You might get some that do bear. You might get some that do bear, depending on how it is that they're typing. Or you might get a student in OneNote who uses the draw feature, and under that same menu, actually write, depending on what device they're using right there. And again, we're using that OneNote class notebook as a portfolio to highlight all of the work, but we can include lots of different types of content in here. If a student, for example, was working in a station and you wanted to take a picture of what they've done, because maybe they were actually working on pen and paper, they were drawing, they were coloring, they were problem solving. Again, OneNote has that ability to simply insert a picture, but this time I'm going to take a picture with the camera. Great. The only book I have here today is really making me laugh. It's Adulthood for Beginners. So I'm just going to pretend that this is some real grade 1, 2 kindergarten material. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to just take a picture of my book. It'll show me a preview. I'm like, yep, that's great. That demonstrates the student's learning really well. I'm just going to insert that in. And now I actually have a picture of the student's learning on the page.
And then, Alex, that would be the picture function or the camera function is a great place to jump in and remind us that OneNote also works really nicely as an app. And so you can take those, because where do we take pictures, right? We take them on our phone, and so we can pop them right in from our phone. We don't have to get to the computer and pick it up from somewhere and get it in there. We can just use our app.
And in the OneNote app, actually, which I have because I use it, as I said, all the time, you don't even have to take the picture in your camera separately. So for example, if I wanted to, you can see my screen, it's the same layout. I can literally just do a plus, and on that page, I get this tiny little camera symbol as the first symbol. So I can just click the camera. It'll say take a picture. So there I'll get my camera up, which you'll be my face in this time. But let's say I'm going to just take a picture of this. This happens to be the student work. Yes, I'm happy with it. And then you can see the picture actually goes straight into the OneNote page. So I can do that straight from my phone. I don't have to take the picture ahead of time. So again, really great way to capture that in-class learning, and then think about it. You've now got the student who's written something, drawn something, done something in class. You want to ask the student to explain their learning. Great. Go into that audio feature and have the student explain. Today in class, we did this activity where Miss Alex told us that we had to connect the dots. And I can say, well, what material did you use? I used pipe cleaners, and they are red and blue and green. Oh, did we learn about colors this week? Yes, Miss Alex, we did. There we go. So you have that audio recording of the student really explaining their learning right beside the picture of the thing that they had just done in class. So OneNote is great for taking those different types of inputs and putting it all on one page. And again, if for whatever reason you decide, okay, I want this to get to every single student, you come to that class notebook feature, you just do distribute page, and it will let you do that. If you want to send it to every single student, you just choose distribute. Maybe you've got some examples that want to go to some students and different activities that go to different students. Then you could choose individual distribution, and it will allow you to select students from that list. So maybe this is an activity for Henry and Marcia, but Kara, maybe she's already advanced, so I'm going to send her a different problem of the week, for example. Okay, so one last thing I'm going to show before I give you some of the resources is that in your OneNote binder, when you actually click on Class Notebook, which is that Class Notebook feature, the very last option to the right says Manage. And Manage is where you're going to be able to, if I can actually get in here, Manage is where you're actually going to be able to go in and choose. Here we go. I'll go back to my, I don't know why this is, there we go. I can actually go in and get my parent links. So when I click Manage the Notebook, so I'm here, I clicked Manage the Notebook, you'll see that you get a parent and guardian link. And what that will do is you can actually get for an individual student a read-only link for that one student, or you could say, I want all students to have a link. And what OneNote will do is it will generate a unique link for every single student. So Kara's parents or guardians could see just Kara's portfolio. Henry's parents or guardian could see just Henry's portfolio. They don't see anything else except their individual learner. If you wanted to share, for example, the content library where you're preparing all of the uncompleted work before you send it out, you can also share out a link for the content library. That way they can see the original before the work had been done, and then their own individual child or learner's work.
Or
So
that could be
that
newsletters too.
Yeah.
Newsletters or anything there could be in the content library. It doesn't
Content
have to
library
be.
is a great place. Okay, so that is what we have for you today. We covered a lot in the short time that we had. I do just want to leave you with that information about the Microsoft Educator community. Oh, there we go. So that Microsoft Educator community, if you're thinking, oh my goodness, Alex, we covered so much content in an hour. There's so much more I'd like to learn about OneNote. This is the place for you, this education.microsoft.com. That will actually take you to this Microsoft Educator Center. And all you have to do is sign in with your school email address. It'll be a sign in button in the top right hand corner. And you'll find that there's lots of training around a lot of the different Office 365 tools, including Class Notebook and OneNote. And if you would like, as I mentioned to you today, we actually do have that special, where are you? There you are. We have that special code that you can use to claim 1 hour of professional development. So this is in that slide deck. It is
in the chat.
Yeah, exactly. It's in the chat as well. So all you need to do is actually go to the Educator Center, sign in with your email, and you'll see that you can redeem an achievement code, which is what you might want to do. You can put that code in and it will give you just a professional development certificate saying you did 1 hour of professional development with Microsoft. So again, that is all in the slide deck, as well as this is recorded. So if you want to go back and watch how to put that code in, you can always rewatch the recording. But if not, thank you so much for your participation. We really hope that you learned a lot this evening, or at least it started to kind of open your eyes and whet your appetite for what you could potentially do for portfolios inside the OneNote class notebook. We have a link here just for some feedback. If you would like to give feedback about the session, please do so with that link. We also have a link to our support email. We are actually people behind this help email. So if you have questions, you can send them to us and we will actually respond to you. It's not like you're writing into the void. We will actually get back to you and help you or guide you towards where you can get your resources. And again, one last time, if you do need access to that slide deck, it is right there for you. I'm just going to present this from here. So there is that link which takes you to the slide deck for today where all of these resources are stored in case you missed anything. And there we go. That is it. That is all I have for you. A lot in an hour, but hopefully well worth your time.